Why is there a stigma in the West about eating alone in sit-down restaurants? This is one of those odd things where it doesn't actually seem like society has a stigma around it. But especially young people entering adulthood assumes is there. You will regularly see questions on this sub of people asking about where TMIT is weird to go to restaurants alone, and the response is a near universal no. My hypothesis is that this comes from school cafeteria trauma. For many people, especially those on the fringes of school communities, finding a seat for lunch in school cafeterias is anxiety-inducing. Who you sit with is a very visible sign of your friend group inclusion or exclusion. This creates a general anxiety around making sure you have a seat, making sure it is with the right people, and in that case, somewhat legitimate fear that sitting by yourself will be seen, noticed and commented on by peers. This is then taken into post-school life as in justified and false idea that if you go alone everyone at the restaurant is going to be looking at you and judging you the way peer groups in high school would have. I think this is the main way to explain how this stigma seems to manifest in adult life. Which is that person after person when young feels this is a stigma only for it to be overcome and to be reassured by older people that, no, go do what you want cause nobody cares. As opposed to most more actually ingrained social stigmas that are more adhered to as people age and spend time in the world and have it reinforced rather than lessened as people realize it isn't actually there. Adding a few things. 1. The model most people have growing up is their parents and their peers. Most parents only go out to eat with their family in tow, and most kids only go out to restaurants with friends. Because why spend the money otherwise? So there isn't a lot of lean red solo dining behavior to model. 2. Also, for a lot of people, eating out all the time wasn't as much of a thing in prior generations. Spending the money meant it was a big deal, so it was usually reserved more for big occasions. Current culture spends a lot more money and time eating out casually than a lot of prior generations. This can influence the way norms develop and get passed on and are portrayed in media that itself influences norms. For the most part, a movie scene of a person eating solo at a restaurant doesn't advance the plot much, whereas group dining scenes make for good dialogue and plot progression. I'm a server, and it's quite common for people to come in and sit alone to eat. Sometimes it's a parent who just wanted a meal alone without their kids. Sometimes it's college students who aren't used to having roommates and wanted some alone time. Sometimes it's people who are traveling alone. There are tons of reasons someone would come in and eat alone, and servera don't really think much of it, and other patrons of the restaurant don't pay them any mind. Nobody cares what you're doing 90% of the time, even if you're doing something weird AF. It's quite normal in my area in Canada. I mean, it's more common to meet up for food with friends, but it's not abnormal at all to see someone enjoying a dinner or a drink and snack alone. I do it very often and have worked in many restaurants. I think people just get socially anxious about random things and overthink it. I think you've seen this trope in Western TV and movies and are assuming it's a real-life thing, when it isn't really. It's used a plot device in film to signify that somebody is lonely, abandoned, has no friends, etc., but there isn't really any stigma around it in day-to-day life. It is normal to eat alone. You don't always have to have people with you. If you're nervous about people bothering you or something, just put a book on the table with you. Now you're studying and it would be rude to interrupt you. I ran into this in college where someone just randomly decided to sit with me 'cause I look lonely, having breakfast with no friends. It was extremely annoying to have to politely listen to this girl try to make friends for me while I just wanted to eat my bagel and get to class. I am not a morning person. Just leave food and coffee near me in the morning and leave me alone until I am awake enough to function. Nobody I have ever met has had this opinion. There's no stigma. Only people who are insecure with themselves have this opinion because they think they need other people's validation or permission to engage in what are normally social activities. Do you go to the movies alone? Eat alone? Have a beer at a pub alone? Then you aren't one of those people. Is it? Never heard about it being a stigma. There isn't. There are people who think there is and impose a stigma on themselves. But nobody cares or notices or thinks twice. Look around next time you're out. People are there solo. This one is slightly annoying. Because it's a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. The reason a stigma exists is because most young people think there is one. The places and times they go out to eat are with others. So that creates an expectation, the violation of which is uncomfortable. Realize though, two classes of people do not think there is any stigma. Restaurant workers and business travelers. Businesses travelers are extremely common and usually eat alone. Most restaurants see a lot of them. But what if you're from a small town? Business people don't travel to small towns. So there should be a stigma. But then the vast majority of people live outside of small towns. So, yeah, self-fulfilling prophecy. And annoying all at the same time. Mostly nonsense. And thinking this is the case is simply a sign that a person has little life or traveling experience. And is thinking their small view applies to everyone. Even though that's not very accurate. Nobody actually thinks this is weird. The media likes to portray this as, this person is such a loser that they can't find anyone to eat with them. I do it all the time. I never get any weird looks or vibes from anyone. Why do you think it is stigmatized? No one cares but you. I do it anyway. Nobody's paying attention to you eating alone. Nobody cares. Get out of your head if you think that. I've heard of it, but never experienced any weirdness because of it. I always eat alone when I'm out. Just my thoughts from what I've read, seen before. There used to be two styles or restaurants. The regular meal style and the celebratory style. Back when men didn't cook. They had tons of small restaurants that were cheap for a quick meal. Lunch counters, diners, etc. It was expected that a single man would stop in 3 times a day. I know this is sounding really sexist, but it historically was. The other end of restaurants was the celebration style, where you would go get a big fancy meal with your family or friends to celebrate a promotion or landing that big deal. These made up a small % of the total restaurants. Lots of restaurants realized that the food was practically the same cost for both. And even if the big portions cost a little more, they would be a small % of the price and they could charge a lot more in total. This led to less regular meal styles and way more celebratory style. Also the huge American portions. The problem with that is the cultural stigma of those restaurants being for a gathering and not a quick meal remained. Even if the majority of your options now are celebratory, culture says you still should be celebrating something and with friends or family. I agree you shouldn't need to. I travel for work. And when I'm on the road I feel totally natural going into a sit-down restaurant alone for a nice meal. But I feel weird doing it at home. The funny thing is, no one knows I'm away from home when I'm traveling. And no one knows I'm home when I'm home. It's all in my head filled with cultural norms baked in from the past, but it's also why things like sub shops, delis, coffee shops, etc. feel natural going to alone. They are the remaining, regular meal, restaurants. Oh, and today, no one cares. The restaurant is happy they have another customer. The people around you don't matter. Enjoy it. On shallow, insecure people think like this. Do whatever you want. It's your life. Who cares what a stranger thinks about you?
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Ericast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.